It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We're reviewing the 30 best momentum companies over the last quarter and the companies that have had the best improvement in momentum just this week. That's the launchpad and where we'd like to see the companies before they springboard up into becoming market leaders. Gary Glover's been through the list, pulled out his favourite charts, and he's going to walk us through them this morning. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. Good. We did have one. There was one question actually. Someone posted online there regarding the launch pad, and like saying, "Oh, yeah, like, these stocks have already taken off. What does this mean? What are you looking at basically?" So obviously, someone who hasn't been following this report for very long here, but what we're trying to do here is that we're showing here is that these stocks that do pop hit the launch pad, they just don't. A lot of them just don't fade. A lot of them continue to keep running, and these market leaders, they continue to lead, and they often stay in this the quarterly momentum launch pad for a lot longer than anyone thinks. That's the essence of the quarterly momentum there, and kind of reminded me. There was a phrase that I was listening to trading podcast this week. Michael Cavell, I was talking to Larry Height, who's a trend trader there, talking about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos sort of said, if you get a seat on a rocket ship, you don't worry about what seat you get, you just get on. So I thought that was a cracking little phrase, and really typical of trend trading is that, most people are worried about, where they're sitting, who they're sitting next to, whether they get a view or not. But trend trading doesn't care about all that sort of stuff. All it cares is about it is that it's going up. And that's the thing about the momentum stocks here is that they're, once you're, you'll see the percentage moves on these stocks is, can be obscene there for the top 5-10% of these sort of stocks. So got some monster moves, and they hit the launch pad initially. You look at them and go, oh, they're popped up. Oh well, some will pop back here, but a lot of them will consolidate and then go again, particularly the ones on big volume. So we're looking for stocks that hit the launch pad, good, healthy, strong volume, leading sector a lot of the time, Chris, as we know, we're looking for those sort of leading themes, leading sectors, looking for a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a pause, a little bit of consolidation, and then off we go. And those stocks that are in this in top 30 in momentum, that's basically them. That's the stocks that have hit the launch pad, taken off, had a good move, had a pause, kept going, and they run and run and run. And oftentimes we're seeing some really, really big moves here. So AZS is number 3, Soil Minerals, so that's up 156% since it's hit the launch pad there. Pretty big momentum score there, around 64 as well. Not quite as big as the 78, number 1, but a bit hard to trade that one. But this one here has had those sort of, good pops on volume there. It's had the little breathers on the light volume, and then it's pushed up again and gone to new highs again on good volume. The whole thing there just sat on top of the previous high. Again, low volume pullbacks there, built again, and some good volume there. And again, these low volume breathers, and then that's basically between that high and that little pullback, that low, there's actually spacing there now. So that's sort of bullish spacing. So trend will basically, overlapping trend is a weak trend. A trend that basically sits on top of the previous high is starting to gain strength. A trend that basically, when it pulls back, it leaves space between the previous high. That's a really strong trend. That's bullish spacing. And you go off there, and then you get these, once you sort of start getting vertical there, basically getting these vertical trends there, sort of blow off type moves that are pretty aggressive. So that's the essence of sort of the trades here. But that's what the holy grail here is really. So so I hope I've answered that question there. Is that just because they've sort of popped here doesn't mean it's all over. And that, if you've been following the quarterly momentum report here for a long time, that typifies, how long these trends can run, a lot longer than everyone thinks. And we're looking for strength, looking for cool off, looking for strength again. And some of the moves are phenomenal here, like this one here. I mean, AZS has had even after this, at the time, if you look at that chart, they would have been pretty vertical in that move. It's almost more than doubled there. but then it's gone through that move there on pretty strong volume and kicked on through again. So just hope that explains the essence of the reports there.
No, it's a good explanation, and it's also seeing them run on the launch pad. It's also a function of what's happening in the market. For them to have the strongest momentum change within a week, it's got to have popped. But we've seen the market pull back in the last couple of days. And what we can expect to see in a pullback is a launch pad to bring up something different. And this is something you and I talked about off air throughout the week. You were noting that the launch pad was throwing out different sectors and they weren't shooting the lights out, but relative to the rest of the market, it was bringing up themes that were actually holding their ground while the rest of the market was falling away. And that can be a different indicator in a different set of market circumstances. And I think that's what you were digging through on the first day of this, the market pulled back is.
That's right. Yeah.
Its ground.
Yeah. So which sector? I mean, there's the sectors that were top ranked yesterday after that massive fall. Those sectors didn't particularly. I mean, they didn't have big moves or anything. They weren't running hot there. But obviously they were just holding above. Everything else was getting creamed, and they were holding up tight, which we know is a good sign. So it doesn't on the chart there. You're just seeing almost a flatness in activity, or not too much there. But that sector has held up pretty well. So, which means people are not selling that sector, or people are supporting that sector. So, yeah.
So that maybe we'll pull that one apart next week. But it's noted this week. There's already some good runners like AZS, and you've got SLM on the screen here. What's happening there? Yeah,
look, SLM's just had a nice pop on the volume there. So, a bit of a, you might see there's a little bit of a VCP in here. This sort of consolidation, bit hard, bit small, but did sort of pop here on some pretty big volume there. So, and it has run since then and sort of kept going. There's been a few. Oftentimes when you see them run a bit hot, you're just looking to sort of see if there's any on these pullbacks there. Is there any sort of selling in there? And even through that, after that, this looks like it's run a lot. This is most people look at that and go, okay, it's too hot, too dangerous, and it is pretty dangerous to trade some of these here. But when you see them basically have a pullback here, look at that volume in there, massive volume, all the way up to the high here. Has a down day. Geez, no selling. Another down day here, consolidation day, nothing. Next two down days, no selling still. And top it up, a lot of volume again, new high there. So still looking pretty healthy. So that's what we're looking for there is just not to see that strength in the move, and then the pullbacks to see that consolidation there. I think WC8, which was Wildcat, talked about this last week. Again, it's had a pretty good move. We had that 1 day selling, which is okay, but we didn't see much follow through there. And we saw it's consolidated here. Once the volume dried up here and it didn't really get going on the downside, that can be a little bit of an omen there. And we've obviously sort of popped up here. Again, had the 1 day selling here. But again, it's sort of dried up here again. So I'd like it to sort of sit on top of that. So it has overlapped. That's important to me not to overlap. But if this was sort of sitting on top of that previous move, hadn't come back in there, that would look better to me. But still sort of showing a bit of strength there. But yeah, each to their own. ERD. I did actually. I was watching this one, Chris. Actually, I did look this up because I noticed that there was a bit of volume come through the low here, and it had a nice little move up, and then it had this little high type flag in there, sort of. So I'm not sure the percentage move was big enough for it to reach the high type flag rules there, but still a pretty decent move. But more encouraging me was a consolidation there. I just couldn't sort of see anything going on, but that was my loss because look what's happened. The whole thing sort of popped up here on some good news here. So, but oftentimes you're looking at that little run there, good volume, pull back on lighter volume, and then consolidation again here. That's obviously sometimes they won't gap up on your news, but they might just move there. REC was sort of one there, Recharge Metals, obviously in that it's a hot sort of space there. Again, we're sort of just seeing pretty good volume through here, pretty light volume on the pullback there. So just see very, very light volume come again. Look at that volume there, Chris.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, even though this sort of it's maybe overlapping a little bit, but when you see that it's gone down here 3 days after going to a new high, and no one's selling this thing. So if you manage to get maybe buy these out of the break here at a B wave or something there, or maybe you bought it after the consolidation here, this wouldn't have worried you at all, because that's not showing selling there, and then we've popped here again. So so again, look, those are the good signs there. WA1 is interesting here. Obviously, this is one that's been on the list for a long time here. Not sure how many days that one's on the list there.
They came on Launchpad months ago now, and once it gets over 45 days, we've sort of stopped the counter, because it's comes off and then comes back into the Launchpad, which it would have done. So
it's been running for a while. So the interesting little tidbit here is that see how this stock's really running really aggressively here, and just a bit of a something else sort of learned following that Christian Kalamagi is that he looks at the 10-day and the 20-day moving average, and just in terms of sort of see how strong that stock is. Or oftentimes some of them will just sort of climb the 20, pull back towards the 20. Others that are really strong only come back to the 10. You can sort of see here, this has stayed below, above the 10 the whole time. It's touched the 10 a couple of times and gone to a new high. Just sort of crossed the 10 here. So it's now sort of broken the 10, even broken, gone slightly below the 20. Didn't stay there, but has sort of possible change of character there for that WA1. So, if you were riding this, you're lucky enough to sort of ride this up here, probably should have been, you would have had me personally would have had a stop at the 10-day moving average. So if I saw it close below the 10-day, probably would have been getting out of that. So this would have sort of had me getting out. So the other thing too is that's the largest correction so far of the move. See how they're all sort of small. So I never want to see, if you see a nice sort of strong trend, will only have sort of what they call uniform pullbacks. They'll be sort of similar in size, or they'll get smaller in size. So it should get sort of smaller as you get to the top there. When you get the biggest correction of the move, it's what's referred to as like an overbalance of the trend. So two things can follow that overbalance is that you go back up and make a lower high. Sometimes you can actually even go and make a new high, but it is a sort of usually the start of a corrective process once you get the overbalance. So you're either going to go sideways or you're going to go through a decline. Typically is what normally follows that overbalance. So just thought that was interesting, sort of just to cover that. Triple L's had a pretty nice move there. I sold the dad stock too early. It sort of really kept going. Had a few little sort of some heavier sort of down days in here, but just had a few light days on the side here. But I think that once that there's your little almost a little pivot day there, Chris. Sort of after your little congestion, you've sort of broken above that high
with a decent volume compared to what the last.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's not. That's what I mean. So that you might have said, you just might have run all the way up here and you've missed it completely. But then if they sort of have this little consolidation there, and that's your little, you can that's a little BCP as well. The first leg down, then congesting under the high, and then closing above. A little cup and handle effectively if you're looking at shorter term charts there. But either way, that's a consolidation and a break there basically. And a break some good volume there. So
that's I think probably a high tight flag as well. What, 50 cents, almost to $1 consolidation, way in the top half.
Yeah.
And then a breakout with a good volume over the overhead resistance in the congestion.
So it often looks like, when you're sort of trading those, if I rub this out here, and only look at the chart there, this would be at the top of the chart. Be like, oh, it's too high. Our eyes naturally, our instinct is that say, oh, no, it's run too high. But we need to be following the price action. So you need to follow the, what sort of volume's coming in here. So pretty good volume. So you can have that 1 day of selling there as long as it dries up remaining. Nice recovery there, nice volume sort of came back in. Didn't sort of follow through there, but then it also pulled back and it didn't see any selling and then you've gone through the top there. So this indicates to us here, if you see this consolidation, it's not too late to basically sort of come into those moves. As we've seen there, that if you got sort of set at 94 here, we're currently 115 at the moment, so that's still a pretty nice return there. So and he still might be running with it potentially there. DLI was number 18 on the list. The only thing we sort of saw here is that little cup and handle again, the same sort of congestion, little handle, and then we're basically sort of breaking through. Interesting that once it actually broke through, came back, retested that range, and it's gone again. The volume there, Chris, as well. After this congestion there with low volume, this day here is telling us that someone's buying this thing up here. In fact, we've seen some big days here as well. Saw that one day of volume there. The next day is a bit lighter there, and then we've got return to the volume again. So still pretty strong here. So again, oftentimes they look like they're extended here, but the price action's consolidating and showing strength there.
Just on that, with that large down day, 4 days ago, that amount of volume, the volume was 75% of it on the next day. But does that tell you something from a Wyckoff perspective?
Just those,
the day before.
Yeah, like the fact those 4 days. So I heard a lot of traders say when they see like 4 big days like that, even on like an index, if you see four strong weeks of strong volume there, that's normally when you get a bit of move there. Sometimes they can go over 6 weeks. That's usually the start of what they call, that's like a big accumulation type of characteristic as well. So, when you see a block like that is strong. That's
accumulation of some sort.
Yeah, well, in the what this would normally be would be a sign of institutions entering the market. So this is like on the US sort of stock there where you have to they have to disclose. And I think Market Smith there just sort of discloses how many funds are holding the stock, and but those sort of volume days there would be a sign of some heavyweights coming into the market there with some size there. So so that does look pretty strong there. So it's a good sign for that stock actually. EIT, so KGL was number 23. And this has had a bit of a pop out of the range, broken above the 50-day moving average. Just highlight this one. Just it's still very early, so I'd like to sort of see some sort of setup here. But yeah, this is just one to watch here, just because this has had pretty light volume all the way down here. Just started to see volume, signs of accumulation taking place here at the lows here. So this is definitely one to sort of put on our radar to keep an eye on there. I think we spoke about Mesoblast as well during the week. Had it in my Tuesday report there, but this is sort of, it's now got a series of sort of high lows here, like the 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern there. It's like a basing type of characteristics. Starting to see volume increase on the up days and then try up a little bit on the down days here. Good volume again on the surge here. So it's just starting to see a possible change in character for the stock here. So it looks had a bit of a run. It's been a bit of a messy sort of stock here. So I think, probably in line with the market being a bit messy as well. But yeah, definitely interesting sort of stock there to keep an eye on. I think you'll probably see it drift off a little bit here now, but yeah, just possible change of character for that stock there. So it's worth having a look there. FCL, this would be a nice little pattern here. This and that little pullback there, and then this little consolidation. That's that's a little BCP pattern there. That tight price action. That's what you're looking for. Ideally, it's sort of just under the high, but when it's like that, that's pretty constructive. Just shows that it's gone up here, reasonable volume there. It just sort of drifts off here, so no volume comes in, and then bang, volume drives through here. So once it sort of closes above here, or once it trades above a little B wave there, and so that's can't see because I've got my face over that. But once you close above 182, to me that's a good sign now. It's like sort of like a little breakout there. I think something like ABC when we had that little tight formation there. So when you see like 5 or 6 tight days like that going nowhere, going sideways after an upward move there, that's a pretty good sign as well. So
feel like Toby Crabble's approach on the inside days.
Yeah,
First impressions.
that's right. Yeah, so just see just sit back. All those sort of really tight patterns there when they tighten up are all pretty good here. I thought this one was pretty interesting there, but it has now sort of, I thought this had a pullback here, had a second pullback, and then a pullback in here. And at the stage there was no volume. We saw a little bit of volume coming here after the third or fourth day. I thought, well, it could be a little VCP in here, but it has actually broken below here now, and it has exceeded that second leg down in size there. So, look, still pretty constructive overall, but for me personally, because it's sort of broken that VCP rule, I probably like it a bit less here. But oftentimes when they gap up, they can come back and fill that gap before they go there. I think it was Austral ASB, gapped up there, came back and filled some of that gap. So a lot of people think you got to come back and fill the entire gap. I'm not one of those. I think if you just have a bit of a consolidation back in here, this has just come back to the 10-day and then continue there. Look, come back to the 10-day again, come back to the 10-day again. It's funny, once they sort of, once they find the MA, they usually stay with that MA until it changes. So, so it's worth sort of following into that. So that was the quarterly momentum. So looking at the launchpad stocks there. So KGL was number one. That's what we mentioned, having a look at that. WR1 was number 5 there. Look at here. I thought this is okay here, Chris. Just not sort of seeing the volume come in here on this last little pop here. So looks like a nice little consolidation come back in the trend. It's gone above the previous swing high, which I think is encouraging. But I just haven't sort of seen the follow through there. So it looks okay without being great.
That's the second time it's been, well, third time it's been on the list. I remember we've looked at that in its last runs. So it's launchpad, momentum, then it's had a pullback, like I said, and it's reloaded on the launchpad again.
Yeah, it's can be a bit of a messy, but just a bit more liquidity sort of through this whole period here. And now there's sort of less liquidity, less volume sort of coming in. So, when you don't sort of see that commitment coming in there, those are usually the sort of ones that don't really have the bigger moves. So could potentially go up here, but from my experience, they're the ones that don't have the follow through, don't have the the decent moves. And we're trying to catch the bigger moves here. We want the ones that are going to follow through. I think AOF just want to keep an eye on this because it's a little bit of volumes come in there, but still in a bit of a downtrend. So sort of keep away from that. P&R was sort of interesting to me, just because it's pretty lumpy volume here. This is pretty good volume through here, and it had that little tight congestion and had a bit of a pop, but it hasn't really gone on with it. But since then, it's actually sort of corrected. It's done like a little bit of an ABC in here. All through here, Chris, there's probably not that much volume. So really, it's sort of held up pretty well. Now we're starting to see some volume coming again. So it's a little unusual there because it's not the most exciting rally. It's a bit of a dull rally. It's a bit of a small stock as well. So that makes it a little tough there. But the volume profile there has got me curious. So that's pretty chunky down here when you look at this historically as well. So definitely one to sort of keep an eye on there. But the class one, just saw that volume coming in again there. So I think that looks sort of interesting to me.
The large volume and not the hugest move in comparison to previous moves. It's kind of a sign in itself, isn't it? Relative.
Yeah, it's sort of holding up and it hasn't sort of sold off too much. And oftentimes, you're looking at what thing about Wyckoff theory. The interesting thing about that is that it sort of shows you what normally happens, and then if you sort of see something which shouldn't happen, that can be more important. So it's like going up, having a big range day, and then volume being really low. You go, that market's gone up a lot. So you look at a big range day, but there's no conviction in that buying. It's just sort of moved through. Obviously, there's no one in the market there, so it's just moved through quite easily. But there's no liquidity in that market, so that can show you those big wide range days should be with big volume, and then the small range day should be lighter volume. So if you sort of see something you shouldn't see, that can be just. So this is just interesting here that this hasn't come off much. It's obviously in a downtrend. It's actually held up pretty well. Now we're seeing big volume come in here pretty early off that low, even though it hasn't been impulsive here so far. But yeah, so just definitely sort of something sort of different there. Here's one to keep an eye on here, just because we've seen a few of these sort of stocks that gap up and come back and fill. So whether they come back to the 50 or 20, whatever they come back to, and build from there. So a little small, but yeah, definitely one to sort of keep an eye on there. Sort of, so yeah, I don't think it'll come back and fill the complete gap, but they often do come back and fill a large part of that gap. WBT. This one's been pretty. I was sort of surprised me a little bit there. I thought this might have actually. There's pretty heavy volume this leg down here. Pretty decent volume on the second leg here, but it did sort of run up in here. Have this little bit of a tight flag in here, a little consolidation there. Obviously, we sort of saw through here. We had a little consolidation there. Not much volume there. So I'm noticing this a lot, Chris. You sort of consolidate for 4 or 5 days here, and then it's almost the day when there's just no volume at all. So, and that's often where they sort of turn there. So this obviously did go down the next day, but then reverse there. But yeah, once you sort of see that, 4 or 5 days on a side, and then the volume almost disappear one day, that should be your alert to be on alert for the stock here. So had a decent volume day there, and has sort of gone on there, but again, this has gone up on declining volume here, gone back to retest the high here, so not the same sort of breadth that was on the first move. Probably sort of similar breadth to the second move, being honest here. So yeah, just be cautious with that one. MIN number 25 is on the list there. Quite like this here, Chris. Just for a number of reasons there. Obviously, we went to a new low here. So basically sort of had like a little bit of a false break. So this was the new low, and then reversed it. We've just seen a lot of those big tier stocks come back, retest the lows, and then reverse there. So since then, we've had, 1, 2, 3, 4 days up here, pretty good volume. So, and now we've cooled off here the first day here, pretty light volume. Next day, light volume here. Just is like 3 days here, but the market's been hammered pretty hard here the last few days. Look how well the stock's holding up. So this is showing a bit of strength in that downward market there. And then on the weekly, we know that this whole thing is just sitting on top of that previous high as well. So it's a bit of a key level there. It's oftentimes old highs become new lows, and a support zone to watch there. So this is definitely very interesting, this one here to me.
So in the context of the overall market, we've got the market pulling back significantly, the largest pullbacks in quite some time. The mineral resources is holding tight. The volume's been relatively low. So from a relative performance against almost everything else on the market, they've been outperforming just by kind of holding their ground.
That's right. So, while everything else has been sold off aggressively the last few days, this has struggled to go down here. And look at today, there's almost, we're only early here, we're only first hour here, but pretty light volume again. So not the stock's not, I would like to be seeing it come back so I can buy it a bit lower. But so far it's actually holding pretty tight here. So this is actually looking pretty encouraging to me. So hopefully maybe it can, could edge back into this, slightly lower here, but yeah, some good signs there. So definitely one to keep an eye on mind here. PPM, Pepper Money. Just interesting here because we've had a bit of a pop on good volume there. And now we've sort of broken this one swing high and broken a second swing high there. So possible change of character there. So definitely got to watch this one here, wait for a little consolidation there, but that should be on our radar now. And CRN, which is Coronado. So, we're seeing like a lot of coal stocks come back onto the the launch pad here the last few weeks, Chris. So this one's had a nice bounce here. What we're seeing there is reasonable volume through there as well. So that whole volume up to that high has been pretty decent. Now we're going for a little consolidation. So it's gone above the previous swing high, which I like. As long as it sort of fell short of there, sounds minor there. But I like to see them, if it's a downtrend there, they go back and hit the previous swing high, and then they fade there. They can sell it pretty aggressively. But so far here, we've just seen 1, 2, 3 days of nothingness here so far. So if we saw something like maybe 5 or 6 days congestion here, that would be pretty encouraging there. And again, we're looking for that volume to dry up. So definitely one to watch there. So I don't know weekly is not compelling here because obviously it's still sitting under there. So that's a little bit of a negative there. But they've had a pretty decent move. I think we saw Whitehaven Coal had a pretty good bounce. Some good volume there. It's had a pretty, it's a good sort of 5-wave form on the downside there. Had a pretty decent correction. I would have liked to normally you look at these sort of blow-off moves. You want to sort of see that come back to the last sort of trend point. So I would like to sort of see it come back to this level, but sometimes that might be the last blow-off move there, the last leg up there. So that's often the point. I'll come back to one of those sort of key lows there. So might just sort of consolidate here, build from here, but definitely a sector to keep an eye on there. Again, that's really it. That's me for the day, Chris. But there's a few opportunities out there. Pretty messy, a bit tricky. We might have to look at sort of some of these. I was thinking maybe we should look at the ASX 300. Look at the worst 30 stocks for the year, and maybe try and pick 10 of those that we think might have a recovery and just see how they go over the first month after June 30, because that's historically been not a bad little trade there. It's probably been an 80, 90, 85%er looking at some of those. So there'll be still some losers there, but that tax selling just sort of keeps the foot on the throat for some reason on some of these stocks until June 30, and then a lot of the stocks that have been down for quite a while, they do tend to they can recover. This some stocks don't recover. We know that, but
they go out the back door of the 300 and don't come back.
Yeah. But there should be some reasonable ones. I mean, something like go back 4 or 5 years ago. I think Telstra was probably the worst performing there 1 year into that June 30. It was in the top, it was in the bottom 10 out of the 300. And the following year, I think it was in the probably number 1 or something. It was something crazy like that. So.
I do remember we were looking in doing your Tuesday recordings back then, and when you mentioned Telstra, it was kind of a difficult thing to propose because everyone hated Telstra at that stage. It was the dog of the market. Yeah. It was the worst one, and everyone had flushed it out of their portfolios. And you put forward that end of financial year trade and said, well, actually, Telstra is one of the top 10, so let's see how it goes. Yeah.
There's quite a few stocks that could, I think things like SGR's had a pretty tumultuous year. Things like Elders has had a pretty nasty year as well. There's a few stocks on there, sort of in that 300 that might be pretty ugly. So some businesses that could turn around here. So we might look at the bottom 30. So what's that number? 270 to 300 for the year in terms of performance. So. And see if we can find some hidden gems in there maybe.
Right. Well, maybe we can apply some of the things we talk about during the week, which is the sector and industry filters, and see how their rankings might help. So there you go. We've got something to bring forward to next week.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital. Gary's talked about a few of the strategies. There's a whole playlist on the right-hand side there. Also, his Tuesday reports where he goes through things like buying the lowest performing companies at the end of tax season and seeing how they're set up for the next year. And that's all on his Tuesday reports on the right-hand side. Gary's Twitter handle is over there on the left-hand side.